This is episode 52, The Public Speaker's Public Speaker, with Richard Mulholland.
Can you remember a time you failed? A time you were so close to your goal, but it all came crashing down? We've all been there. But why does this happen? Why do we sometimes fail when we attempt to scale? Here's the secret. In order to grow your business and expand your mind, you need a controlled environment, like a plant growing in a greenhouse. It's my mission to help experts and entrepreneurs grow rapidly by leveraging outside resources and unlocking universal wisdom. But the question is, how will they do it? Join me on this epic journey as we monetize our passions, scale our businesses, and master eternal abundance. My name is Aaron Civitarese, and this is the Growth Podcast.
All right, this is the Growth Podcast. My name is Aaron Civitarese, right? Civitarese. And I'm here with my guest today, Rich Mulholland. He is an expert in the speaker world, and he's been building speaking brands and companies for a long, long time. I'm super excited to talk about this because people are interested in it who want to get in it. Some people are intimidated by it, and I just want to hear from a professional all about it. He has a company called A Missing Link, right? A missing link. Missing link. We got it, baby. Missing link. All right, Rich, welcome to the Growth Podcast, man. Pleasure to have you here.
Aaron, it's so great to be chatting to you.
Absolutely, man. All right, brother. Well, we've been talking a little bit before we hopped on here, getting to know each other, having a good time, exchanging some fun stories already. But let's just jump right into a little bit of background about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you come from, and a little bit of backstory, if you don't mind.
All right, so to come from, let's do that just for fun. I was born in Glasgow in Scotland, but I moved to Cape Town. I moved to Johannesburg when I was 9 years old, and for the last 10 years, I've been living in Cape Town. I'm 46 at the moment. Where I came from a business point of view, is I used to tour with bands. We didn't have work in winter, so I did conference work, but conference work kills your soul because apparently people don't care to put in an effort to present better. So when I was 22, I was like, this is rubbish. It doesn't matter how much lighting, sound, and AV I give you. If you are bad at presenting, it's going to be a crappy event. So I started a presentation company, not because I loved presentations, but because I wanted to save poor AV technicians like me from listening to crap that other people deliver. And that was now, nearly 24 years ago.
Wow. Gotcha. So you're traveling with bands doing the AV and the setup and all that stuff, and then you transitioned. Gotcha. Tell us a little bit about, I'm curious to understand why people don't care, and I'm sure we're going to get into that in a second. Has a lot to do with the mundane aspect of the surroundings, I would assume, but you probably understand how to brighten that up, hey? But before we get into that, let's talk about the bands, man. Everyone loves music. I want to hear some stories. What's going on with the bands?
I was very lucky to tour with some really significant ones. So I programmed the moving lights for an Iron Maiden world tour, which was nice. I was in lighting. So I was a lighting operator. Then I became a lighting designer. And I toured with Def Leppard, Bryan Adams, a bunch of cool bands, Midnight Oil. I don't know if you know them, but it was like a whole really, really cool group. It all started because now it's funny because I'm a punk rocker now. I'm punk rock to the core. But when I started, the band Depeche Mode came to South Africa. And I'd gone to my dad, who had contacts in the industry, and I said to him, I will lick the stage clean for free. You find me a job. And he took me and got me a job as a stagehand. And he said, look, do you want to do sound? Because he did audio, and my sister was an audio engineer. And I was like, no, I want to do something different. He said, what about lighting? Like, cool, let me try that. And so I went in and I actually loved it. I still think being a lighting designer is probably the thing that I was the best at of anything I've ever tried. I loved it. It was so fun for me. It was just one of the most amazing expressions. And lighting controls so much of the mood you can get in a rock show. Yeah. I've got a pretty cool story about that if we get to it later. But it was just a really, really amazing experience. But I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. And in order to get it up to the next level, you have to decide that you want to be traveling 11 months out of the year. And I said, I absolutely don't want that to be my life. So I quit. I started a presentation company. The irony is last year I was at home 7 days a week, twice in 365 days. So I failed.
Yeah. Well, in that sense, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so you were traveling your ass off, traveling with just legendary rock star bands. I don't know if I just want to talk all day about the band parties or if we should
You
go into the
too.
work. We'll save that for another day. But man, that's awesome. You must have so many cool experiences. Hey. Um, and then you saw a gap. A lot of times when we're in marketing and things, we talk about the blue ocean and the red ocean and these things. And it sounds to me like you kind of almost created your own blue ocean, right? You saw that people were just, it was boring and drab and presentations, putting people to sleep, yawning. And you're over here with Iron Maiden slamming shows with like lasers and smoke and shit going off. And you were like, wait a minute, I could probably make this a little bit more entertaining. So how did that moment go in your mind? If you can take us back, like what was the click that made you think like, that's it, this is what I'm going to do?
So I realized quite early on that presentation was everything. There was bands that I loved that came across as holy, that I ended up not liking the music afterwards. Like it was a band I liked going in, I toured with it, and I was like, I don't like these guys. They just don't come across likable, they're not nice. And I couldn't like the music. And then there was artists, for example, my favorite like example of this, and it's the one that just always comes to mind, is Chris Isaacs. Chris Isaacs is so far removed from music that I can get behind. It's just not the kind of thing that I would typically like. And like when I landed the gig, everyone was like laughing, because there was another really cool tour going on. I can't remember what it was, but I got the Chris Isaacs gig because I operated those lights. I was like, this sucks. And I went in and did it. And he was so amazing. It was just 2 gigs I did. This guy's presentation, his authenticity came across so well on stage that to this day, I still think he's one of the coolest artists I've ever seen perform. His presentation was everything. You didn't have to like the music before. You liked his presentation so much that I ended up liking the music as a byproduct. And I thought, wow, there's something to this. And I remember the second night he was performing in Sun City, and the second night of his gig, and this is how I know he was authentic because it didn't happen the first gig. I was operating a lighting system called Color Mags, so color changes. And I was standing next to the LD that was touring with Chris, who was the lighting designer. And all of a sudden, Chris was like looking at the audience, and it was a seated gig, right? So it's like all old people sitting watching him. And he was like, this sucks. And so he turned around and he walked back to the band, and I could hear on comms, the lighting designer said, I don't know what he's going to do here, boys. Like, I don't know what's going on. Just roll with it. And all of a sudden he came back and said, okay, this is a terrible gig. You are a horrific audience. This is not fun. You're supposed to pay money. You're supposed to have fun. We're going to change this up a little bit. And he started playing the opening riff of Enter Sandman by Metallica.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is going to go for 5 seconds. They played the entire song, and he went off. The audience, Chris Isaacs, sorry about that. The Chris Isaacs audience went off to Metallica, and the whole gig changed. I was like, this is a masterclass in how to change an audience dynamic in real time there. And I was like, okay, there's a better way. Then like the next week I'm doing a corporate gig, and some guy standing on the stage being terrible, and he gets off the stage, and this other person comes on, doesn't have lighting, sound, AV, and it just, those speakers, they open their mouth, they grab you by the throat, and they drag you to the end of the gig, and you're like, wow, that guy works. And I thought, like, I can get behind this. This is like intellectually exciting for me. And so I would start going to other gigs I was working on, and they would do the rehearsal. I'd be like, this is terrible. And so I started like consulting, offering tips and ideas. I mean, I was 22. I had no idea what I was doing, but luckily they had even less idea. They were like a 1 out of 10. I was a 2 out of 10. I was like their king, and I always talk about this idea called Stopforth's Law. Stopforth's Law is named after this guy, Mike Stopforth, and it's in any area that lacks an expert, whoever puts up their hand first becomes it. So nobody wanted to own presentations because it was such a crappy, boring sphere that like this 22-year-old punk rock kid that was touring with bands could put up a hand and say, hey, I'll help you suck less in public. And everyone's like, yeah, sure, why not? And I started my business, and that was it. We were working with the CEO from the biggest bank in the country within a year.
Boom. I love it. That's awesome. What a good story, man. That's such an entrepreneurial spirit. You know what I mean? You see a gap, you have an experience with something, and you innovate from one industry over into another, and you see the vision clearly and you execute on that. That's awesome, man. I love that. I really do. And it's so true. When you go to conferences, I mean, I came up in corporate, out of college, and my God, I wanted to fall asleep, man. I really did. Like, I'm not that guy at all. You and I are very similar in energy. And it's like, man, I like to have fun and get loud and be rowdy and stuff. I can't sit and listen to this person just talk in monotone for 4 hours with spreadsheets on the damn projector. I'm going to, so I see what you're saying. And I think that's cool. When you were doing this, so you were 22, you put your hand up, you were like, the expert in the field, everyone around you saw your value. You obviously had a ton of energy and a ton of experience. You've traveled with the top dogs. You were like, yo, listen, I can have fun. I'll show you how to do it and make it fun and pop. Right. You're a state changing magician is what you really are, right? You can change people's state very well, and you understand how to do that. And now you're laying it out in a different industry. So I ask you then, while you were going through this transition and working with bank CEOs in your first year and things, I mean, it's a whole different world for you as far as who you're dealing with, right? It's different to hang with Iron Maiden's sound tech than it is with CIBC's CEO. I'm very sure it's a different conversation. So what type of challenges did you have in that transitional time?
Okay, so the one thing and I think this is important to note here, I mean, at 22, 23, when I started my business, I was a complete asshole. And I mean that in the nicest way, in that I was so confident. It's one of the things that I miss the most. I mentor a lot of speakers, and almost every speaker suffers from imposter syndrome. You know who doesn't have imposter syndrome? A single 22-year-old. When you're 22, you have DSB, delusional self-belief, right? And you just believe that you are everything. And that carried me so far in the beginning. It's actually one of my worries about, and I mean, this is a complete deviation, but we are extending the amount that we're asking young people to study. And what we're doing is we're making them serve their most confident years of their life. The year where they'll walk up to strangers in nightclubs, the year where they'll try stupid things, the year they'll do those idiotic, crazy things that you wouldn't do. And we're making them spend them at university instead of making them start businesses or build their careers.
Yeah.
I don't understand how, my dad, he was born in 1947. He studied for 4 years when he finished school, and that career basically took him up to when he was 60. Now people are reinventing their careers over and over and over again, and yet they're now studying for 10 years at the beginning of their career. It makes no sense. So to answer your question, I had this delusional self-belief. Like, I understood that. That was the first thing. The second thing was I realized very early on that people didn't hire us because they had a presentation problem. And the realization for this was for me that they were paying us more than they were paying their assistants. They were paying us to do one presentation for them, more than they were paying their PA or their assistant, who could do 6 presentations in a month for them. So then I realized, what was it? And that's why, funny enough, the name of my book here, you'll see, and it kind of throws back to that original thing, it was called Boredom Slayer, was because they weren't hiring us because they wanted to have a good presentation. They were hiring us because their ego didn't want to allow them to be boring. They didn't want to get up in front of people that respected them and be boring and embarrassing. So when I started my business, I wore a suit. I had this pure wool knitted suit. It was expensive. Basically, 1 full month's salary went to buying this suit, and I was paying it off for ages. And I wanted to be slick. I walk into a CEO's office of, in this case, Standard Corporate Merchant Bank, and I'm presenting in a suit. He knows exactly. The guy's name was Miles Ruck. We still got a relationship today. I ended up being the officiant at his kid's wedding last year. I walked into his office when I'm 22, 23 years old in a suit and tie, and he places me as an intern because that's what 23-year-olds in banks wear. But then when I started, I was like, until I was 30, I didn't wear long pants. I wore shorts and a t-shirt. That was my thing. When I walked into his office, if a young, confident, business-owning 23, 24, they didn't know how old I was, walked in to their office in a pair of shorts to the CEO of a bank to talk about their conference and their conference strategy, I had to know what I was talking about in their mind. And again, they were thinking, we don't want to be boring. This person certainly isn't boring. So you have to know which dragon you're trying to slay. If I was trying to sell PowerPoint, I would want a suit and a tie, but I wasn't. I was trying to make their conferences and them appear exciting and interesting to their team. So what do you want to buy? Do you want to buy a guy in a suit, or do you want to buy a rock star ex-roadie who understands the dynamics of getting audiences to cheer? And that's what they went with.
Yeah.
As I'm 46 years old and a bit old and conservative, now it's actually difficult because now I'm like the old gray-haired guy, right? It was actually easier when I was younger, and now I have doubt. Now I'm full of doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how that works, isn't it? It's funny how that works. It's so true. Hey, like when you're young, you're just full of it. You're full of it. You know everything. You got all the confidence in the world. And it's so true that you say kids, and you and I were in the same age realm. Kids will.
You don't have a single gray hair. You do not have a single gray hair.
I got a couple there.
There's a few. That's like amateur hour. Look at that.
I got some wisdom coming in. I got some wisdom. Yeah. I got some wisdom stripes coming in. But like 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 through that, college years, those are the years when you're just on fire and when you have absolutely no fear to go out and chase your dreams down. It's interesting you mentioned that. It instantly made me think of like celebrities and rock stars. Right. Because, you look at a celebrity or a rock star, let's just take we're talking music. Let's talk a rock star, pop stars. Let's take a rock star or a pop star these days. Right. You look at these people that are walking around Hollywood, chasing their dreams, and they're extremely authentic with themselves. They are being themselves. The ones that I'm thinking of in my mind, the ones
Post Malone.
Post Malone's a great example. He's a perfect example of it. He's completely authentic. He's tatted up. He's living his best life. He's enjoying himself, but he's totally grounded and he's on fire with himself. He's not pleasing people. He doesn't give a fuck what people think. He's just being himself. And that's why people are attracted to him so magnetically, right? He has that about him. Now, if he was put in a box and made to go to school because he didn't make it in music, if he didn't make it, for example, in the corporate space or in the school space, he would probably be, I don't know, but I would guess he would be just hating it and down and losing his motivation for life. Cut to 20 years later, he'd just be a dude working at a grocery store. And then the reason isn't because he's not talented. It's because he didn't get to chase his dream in that moment when they were on fire. He's in the fire right now and chasing it, and he's allowed to chase it, which is what you're saying. And it's so true. What do you think society should do about that? What do you think the answer is?
Well, so I've never heard it framed that way, but I love every second of it. Being in the fire, what does society do? When you're standing in the middle of fire, parents do what they think they're doing is the right thing, is they grab the fire extinguisher and they try and smother it out of you. But actually, when your fire is fuel, and here's like, and I don't know if we're the right people, it depends on who's listening, but any given time, and let me say this relative. Okay, so I'm going to answer this, and I want to bring it relative to March this year when lockdown happened, right? Yeah. Because that was a fire, right? Yeah. When we go through life trying to smother the very things that are fueling us, and we miss these opportunities. When there is that moment that you feel that fire burning inside of you, you actually have to go with it, because for some reason, when you are 22 years old, you think that feeling is going to last forever. But it doesn't. And I hate sounding like the old dude, but it doesn't, because life catches up and you have to be maturity. You get a mortgage and you have kids and things like this. My fire, the other thing is you get comfortable. Wow. Never let your comfort get in the way of your potential. So I'm living in, like, essentially the house is my house. You can see there's like 1,000 board games behind me. I'm an obsessed board game player. Like I'm living my best life. Everything is amazing.
Yes.
My business took a massive knock because I was comfortable. You know what? You cannot be. You're both delusional and uncomfortable when you're 22 years old, 23 years old. That is the best fuel. And you've got to find other areas where that comes out again. I'm working with a speaker at the moment. Her name is Kirsty Bissett, and she talks about this idea of getting uncomfortable. Like, you have to chase your discomfort. Every great moment in your life happens when you are uncomfortable and when you feel that. And she's so spot on, because that's what happened in March this year, is that fire that could have been destructive. It either is, oh my God, my house is on fire, because that's what happened. Our business went to revenue zero. Every event we were working on was canceled. September this year was the best year in our company's history by far.
Yeah.
So either I decided, oh my God, I'm gonna run and hide and try to put out the flames, or I'm gonna be fueled by those flames and think, okay, cool, this dumpster fire has just cleaned out all the crap in my business, and there's an opportunity, right? Because anytime there's anything unknown, like disaster can be weaponized. and it should be weaponized. And that's what we did. And we built a better business. I've not felt this young and invigorated in years. 2020, and everybody who hates it, they can carry their hate to the grave. This has been the best year in my working career because I was under attack and I needed it.
Yeah. Boom. Fucking love it. I fucking love that. I love it, dude. I love it. It's so true, And the beautiful thing is, with podcasting, for example, I talk to so many people, as you can imagine, right? And everyone I talk to they're in growth mode. They're in the fire. They're on fire. They're doing something amazing. They're following their passions. They're going up and downs, the ebbs and flows of entrepreneurship. It's a shit show. It's awesome. It's a shit show. I'm going to die. It's amazing. I'm crushing it. Right. It's always like this. But the beautiful thing is everybody sees 2020 as it's time to go for it extra hard. So, there's only two responses this year. There's literally only two things you can do. You can use it as an excuse and just say, this year's a write-off. I'm just going to curl up on the couch and chill and remain stuck and don't move at all. And use it because it's a perfect excuse, right? It's such a good excuse. You can watch the election on TV. There's so much stuff to talk about. It's an excuse all day. And it's very easy to slide into that. Our subconscious wants us to. So it's easy to slip into that. If that's you and you're listening right now, it's not a knock on you. It's just letting you know that your reptile brain is winning right now and you need to bitch slap it, because the only way you can grow is by bitch slapping that lower self. But then there's the people that are hungry and going for it, like yourself and like your clients and the people that I have a pleasure of chatting with here. And they tell me the same thing, man. They say this year's been on fire. For me personally, it's been my best year ever. Financially, with my wife, the way our relationship, traveling, moved countries, got a new place, on fire with a bunch of different things. Best year ever, best year ever. And yeah, man, you can't grow if you're comfortable. And I say it all the time, like rock bottom with your back against the wall. It's the best possible place you can be, in my opinion. If you've never hit rock bottom before, I almost, it sounds fucked up to say, but I'm like, I almost hope you do. Because if you haven't been there before, number one, just know that it's coming. And number two, when you hit it, that's the launch pad for the rest of your life. Because when you're in that position of hunger and you just have to make it happen. That's where I was literally 2.5 years ago, roughly. Had to make it happen. No choice. Lost it all. And that's the feeling when you're just like, I'm going to do it. I got to do it. I'm doing it. And you make that shit happen. 2020 gave a taste of that to the entire world. Now, what people did with it was up to them, right? Some people came out of this year with two or three new businesses and a bunch of new revenue streams, new clients, new whatever. Other people are leaving more in debt, more broken, depressed, and pissed off. It's a matter of choice. It's up to you, right? Crazy.
Three things. Can I jump on three points Please. You raised there? Because again, so good. The first thing is an earmark. Somebody I want to introduce you to. My business coach wrote a post today. He had basically a mango chutney business years ago. Massive business in South African sense. Basically, if you went to any African person in South Africa, they knew his brand. Biggest, by far, the market leader. 2 mango seasons where the cost of mangoes, the cost of the base material ingredient was more expensive than what that he sold it for, and his business went under. 100 employees, fleets of trucks, everything. He wrote a post today about it, about how the single, and he wasn't being ironic, he wasn't being nice. He hated that job. He loves this job. Literally the best thing that ever happened to him. I think it would make a growth trajectory. It'd be an amazing guest for the show. And I want to send you that post. The second thing is you were very, very nice to people. You let them off the hook. You said You're not doing a judgment call to them. Bullshit. Fuck you. Get off your ass. Get off your ass and actually get off the couch. Future you is going to hold current you accountable to how you behaved this year. You're going to have to look back when a whole bunch of people, when the dust settles and a whole bunch of success stories and people grow out of the dust, the phoenixes rise from the ashes of 2020, you're going to have to sit back and say, well, you know what? But I did learn the dance to Jerusalem. You can do better than that. And the third thing is you mentioned about excuses. And I think you're absolutely right. We all do have an excuse, but what a gift. For the first time, if you're an entrepreneur, for the first time in your company's history, you have somebody else to blame if you fail. If you fail this year, you can be like COVID. That was what a gift. For my entire career, if I failed, people would look at me and think there's a failed entrepreneur. This year, that changed. This year, I could try anything. We tried a new program. We started outsourcing all of our production. We started dramatically appealing to work with speakers all over the world. We tried a whole bunch of things because if I broke my business, I could be like, hey guys, COVID destroyed my business. Everyone would be like, shit, man, that sucks. And it didn't matter anyway, because even if I went out of business, I still had a reputation and people still had my email address. And when the dust would settle, they'd contact me. And now I have a business with basically no expenses and I can build it up from the ground up. It was literally a win-win situation. And yes, a few of our staff are no longer with us, but we've now been hiring new staff. You can say, yeah, but I've got to try and keep everything safe for the jobs that we have now. No, you don't. You've got to keep your company safe for the people you will employ over the next 30 years. It's not about the 3 people. They're going to leave when they get a better job next year. Anyway, that was a bit of a rant. But seriously, you don't have permission to stay on the couch. Get off the bloody couch.
Yeah. No, you absolutely don't have permission to stay on the couch. Absolutely not. Thanks for calling that out. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, it's true, man. There is a version of you in the future calling you and knows what your potential is. And, this is when inner work and meditation and these types of things come in, because when you start imagining the life that you want, the life that you love, the life that you want to create. Some people are like, I wish. That's not a wish. That's something that you actually are supposed to be doing. Your conscious mind is creating that and telling you, yo, that's what you could be doing. Go do that shit. And when you're 22, you do, right? That's the difference. That's what we're getting at here. But throughout your whole life, man, anytime my mind speaks up and gives me some sort of download, from the collective consciousness telling me to do something or to move in a certain direction, I just follow that shit. I follow it and I don't question it. It served me quite well. There's a saying that I heard a long time ago, and it goes quite well with this whole ranting topic we're on here now about being the best version of ourselves and not having excuses. It was something like the definition of hell is dying and meeting the version of yourself that you could have been.
Stop.
Boom. Motherfucker, right? Seriously. The version of hell is dying and meeting the version of you that you could have been.
You've actually just ruined my day. That is brutal.
Yeah.
Hey?
Gets me off the couch.
I'm not a religious person, but really, get you off the couch. Holy shit. That's horrific. I'm going to tell my wife afterwards. My wife this year, she's an artist, and she has been pushing herself, creating. And again, this would haunt her as well. Like that idea of, there's a guy called Warren Rustand. Did you know him?
Sorry, what's the name?
Warren Rustand.
No.
He's a giant, right? So he played in the NBA. He served 3 US presidents. He's run I think he's been the CEO of 3 Fortune 20 businesses. He's a machine, and he's just the most humble, amazing human being you've ever met. And he said this line to me once. I rarely cry, and I had to do this talk. And I had to stand up in front of these guys and do this talk. And I started crying when I was speaking, but it was that stupid Dawson's Creek style cry. And I was like, oh my God. And I couldn't get it out. And the line he'd said leading up to it, because he'd asked us about were we successful? Did we feel these things? Did we feel this? And then he dropped this bomb. He said, just remember, your success is only important when measured against your potential. And now you've got to hold yourself accountable to your potential. And I was like, no, man. When I started speaking, I said to him, I've lied to myself for years and said that I'm successful and I've got enough and I don't need more and things like this. But I know it was a safe lie because of the risking the status quo to push myself further would have been huge. And this line of yours, the definition of hell is dying and meeting the version of you that you could have become. Whoa, that is that exact saying. I'm going to take a screenshot of this moment. Smile. Because I want to talk about this moment where I learned this thing.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, it's true, man. It's that hit me really hard. I heard that years ago, and it's burned in my brain for eternity.
Totally. You can't unsee this.
You really can't. And it's like, damn, dude. And I do a lot of inner work, and I meditate a few times a day and things. And you know, I it's always that. Like it's, you know, I do quantum timeline jumping and things where I'm like going down the steps in my future and going back and talking to myself, and I'm jumping all over the timeline. And each time I do it, I'm like, oh, that's that version of me right there. There's that dude. He's awesome. Damn, that guy's killing it. Yes. Love it. You're cool, man. And I always have that frame, you know, and I'm like, damn, get your ass out for a run right now. Come back and hop on and get to work. You know what I mean? So it's, yeah, you're always battling yourself. You know, it's an inner game. Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's here to motivate you and get you out of bed in the morning and shit. Like, it's just not happening, you know? It's all on you. And, you know, if you realize that you are going to die, that's another one. As ridiculous as it sounds, I truly believe that we live two lives. I really do. I think we live two lives, man. I think the first life is when we're alive for a while, living our life, going about every day. And our second life, you know, begins the day that we realize we're going to die. And I didn't live my second life until my early 30s. Honestly, I really didn't. I thought I was invincible. It never came up in my mindset. I never really thought about it, like eternity, death. I never really thought about it. And then in my early 30s, one day it just literally hit me. I was like, damn, dude, I'm a third of the way there. I'm going to die. Like, I'm going to die. I got to get my shit together. I better speed this train up type thing. And I really feel like we all live two lives, because as soon as you have that scarcity that, you know, it's ticking down, it's a finite resource, right? As soon as you realize it's finite, it changes everything. It's like gold. It's like the shit's finite. You can't get more of it when it's gone. It's like life. It's finite. It's not like fiat where they can just print a bunch of it. You know what I'm saying? And when I came that realization, I was like, boom, that's true too. And both of those things all hit me around the same year. Just so happened to be when I really started going deep on inner work. You know what I mean?
There's so much. I mean, there's like, dude, like, I'm going to be a stalker. I'm going to phone you after this podcast because there's so much more I want to chat to you about. Like, we're having a follow up just by ourselves.
Yeah, totally.
This two life idea is absolutely true. And there's two examples I want to talk about. The first was my dad had a transient stroke about 2 years ago. And that's a stroke where it caught him. He was walking from the shops to his car, and all of a sudden he felt like he was drunk. Now, I don't drink, but my dad is very traditionally Scottish. And so he felt like he was pissed for a second, which is normally a good day at the office, except he wasn't drunk. And then like 30 seconds later, he was totally fine. It turns out that a transient stroke, when he went to the doctor, is like an early warning signal for an actual stroke that could be fatal. And the doctor said, usually within 6 months to a year, you're going to have a full stroke. And I went around to my parents' house for dinner that night. They lived just around the corner. And I said to my mom, when my dad wasn't there, I said, how's Dad feeling? Is he scared? And she said, well, he's really affected. She said, but I wouldn't say he's scared. And I said, like, she said, we're not scared of dying. We just realized that there's so much left that we want to do. So it wasn't a fear of death. It was a realization. I think they started living their second life then. Mm-hmm. And in fact, this COVID thing for them is really frustrating because they had a cruise they were booked on. They were going to be traveling. They were going to Montenegro. They were traveling all around. They were doing the US, getting a cruise across, doing a whole big thing. And they've been doing that like every year, and it was cutting it short. And they're like, no, but we've got this stuff we want to do. And so I think you're absolutely right on that. And then the second example is maybe a bit more of an extreme case. It was this dude called Arthur. And Arthur. Yes. And he started a business, and he went to Paris one day, and he started this business building dynamite. And he basically was the inventor of dynamite. And then he went, do you know the story?
No, it's just, I mean, he invented dynamite. That's pretty badass.
Yeah, so the dude invented dynamite, and it was basically because he was trying to build better mines. It was all for the purpose of mining, and he invented this thing, and then they realized they could do more than that, and they went into battles. And the idea was they were supposed to use this to basically end the same way that nuclear wars are supposed to be a preventative measure. But of course, everyone just started bombing each other. It turns out it wasn't preventative. Everyone was dying, blowing up. He's sitting in Paris one day, and a newspaper accidentally thought he had died. And they wrote his obituary. So imagine you're sitting there, you open the paper and you read your obituary. And I can't remember the phrase they used, but it was basically like, this man is the merchant of death has died, was the headline, or something like that. And the guy was sitting there reading it, and he was like, this cannot be who I become. This cannot be my story in the life. And he realized that he wanted to be remembered for something else. And his surname is Nobel. And what he's remembered for is he changed his entire life. He decided, okay, I'm going to be a force for good. And he created the Nobel Prize, and he went on to build this whole thing up. And now very few people think of Nobel as the inventor of dynamite and the angel of death. They think of him as a person who's trying to drive humanity forward. Yeah. So he got his second life moment literally when he read his obituary. The problem is most of us aren't getting it. Most of us aren't going through it. And, we need to think about that.
Damn. That's a crazy story.
It's why the Stoics are so great, right? Because there's that whole thing about, remember, memento mori, remember you will die. The Stoics thought about it all the time. They remind you are going to die. This is a finite journey. And they talk to you about it a lot. And when you start doing that, it actually helps you transition into the second life that you talk about, which is another concept that I'm going to remember forever. And the one I'm going to hang up is you've got to explain this quantum jumping to me a little bit more, quantum visioning, because I think it's genius.
Quantum timeline jumping. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can give you a brief nutshell of it right now. Quantum timeline jumping. So essentially you're going into meditation and you are retracing your steps that you've been on your journey, and you're physically going there. You're growing yourself younger, and you're going back through your life into pivotal moments. And you're not so much, it's all about creation. It's not about fixing yourself and finding pain and digging into it. No, it's about just observing, taking the wisdom and moving down the timeline, right? So you go back and you go to these pivotal moments and you grow yourself younger, and you're finding the moments that you're grateful for that you went through. Right. So typically it could be something amazing. You were on fire and you were like, yeah, I went after my dream that day. I was 22 and I gave zero fucks that day and I went for it and I crushed it. And you're like, yes, I'm super grateful that I went for it and did that because it got me to the next point. And then the next point was, oh, I had this breakdown and this thing happened that was bad, but this is what I learned. And then, so you do this process from back into history from where you are today. Then you're looking at your present state, and, you have to be completely satisfied with what you have now, right? Because if you're not satisfied with what you have now, you'll never be satisfied in the future. The future doesn't even exist. We're in it right now, right? So if you're not satisfied now, what makes you think you're going to be satisfied then? You're an unsatisfiable human. So you have to be completely satisfied with where you are now. So you're picking up all the wisdom from before and you're getting gratitude deposits along the way. Then where you are now, you're satisfied with it. You look around and you're like, yes, I'm super satisfied with everything. I just want more of it. I just want more of this, what I got going on here now. I just want to add more of it, more volume of this awesome stuff. Maybe add some more other things because I'm very creative and I like to create things and I like to expand and grow and meet people. So I'm going to do more of it. I'm going to create more. So, okay, satisfied. And then moving forward, it's what you want to create, what you are creating, what you're on the path to be your best self. So you literally start working your way and you go all the way to the end now. So you kind of say like, okay, from here, where's the next kind of milestone you want to be at? Right. So for me, we're living in Italy and stuff. I won't get into the timeline and stuff, but I'll start looking at investments or where we're living or things that I'm doing professionally. Like, okay, now is my book out yet? Yes or no? Am I doing this yet? Yes or no? And I pick these little moments in time and I see myself in that. So you're seeing it through your eyes. You're not observing it like an eagle. You're seeing it as your own self from your eyeballs. First person. Thank you. And so now you're working your way through these steps. Okay. Where do you see yourself on the next step? Okay. And where do you see yourself one step from there? And where does that lead one step from there? Because truthfully, we're always only one step away in life. We're always one step away. Because to get to the fourth step, you have to take this first step. So you're only one step away from the next thing. It's the only thing you can think about. And so you find yourself on that step, the next step, and you say, okay, where do I want to be on the next step? And where do I want to be on the next step? Where do I want to be on the next step? And then you say, okay, you've reached like the ultimate goal, right? So you're thinking in yourself, okay, I have this amazing XYZ and I have, ABC in my life and this is going on and this, everything's boom. And you're just living your best life ever, like I'm flying around in helicopters, getting dropped off at my house. And like, you know, I've got the charity work going on, and we have properties all around the world, and I'm giving back and serving thousands of people, and, you know, all this awesome shit's going on. And like, you're there and you're like, this is the best. And then it's like, no, there's more for me. What's next? So then you're like, damn, what is next? So then you go up a level again. And so you work your way all the way till literally almost death. Right. So at the very end, I usually find myself on a rocking chair with a doobie being like, okay, well, that was an awesome ride type thing. And that's like the end of my rope, somewhere there. And then what you do is that moment is now the present moment. So you need to calibrate your brain to say, okay, I'm in this rocking chair, I'm at this end point. This is real life now. I'm actually there now. So in your mind, keep in mind, you're like 30, 45 minutes into meditation by now. You're totally in a different world. And you are living in that space. It's super visual. It's very vivid. It's colorful. You can hear things and see things because, you know, when you do this a lot, you can become very visual in there. You live that life. People like, you can't time travel. It's like, fuck, yes, you can. I do it every day. So you're in that space and you're like, okay, this now is current time, that future version. So you're that future version, but that's current. In your mind, it's current. Then you do the same process that I just explained, but you work it backwards from the future. Meaning instead of working it from 2020, you're working it from like 2080 or whatever, you know, and that's the current now. So you're working all the way back and you're looking at all the steps that got you to that point. And you're being grateful for each step, and you're thanking yourself for having the courage and for having the tenacity and balls of steel to do the things you wanted to do to get yourself to the next step that ultimately got you to your best life. So you work your way back through the timeline and you just hop it. So this is timeline hopping. Now you just hop, and you spend like 5 or 10 seconds on each spot. And by this time, there's probably like 15 or 20 spots, and you work your way back, boop, 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 all the way back to, like, for me, I go as young as about 15 or so. And then boop, 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 all the way back up to current time, which is your older self, right? And you literally do that timeline now, back and forth, you know, as many times as you want type thing. And then you bring yourself back to where you are now. And right before you open your eyes, you ask yourself, okay, what is the next logical step that I need to do? What is the next logical step that I need to do to get me to my first step? You open your eyes, journal it, and that's your goal for the day or for the week. That's timeline jumping.
Well, let me ask you, so one or two questions about it. The one question is, when you do it on consecutive weeks or consecutive months, how different is the end story? Like, have you been 5 different versions of yourself at the end? Let's do that one first. Or is that picture of yourself, that avatar of, 2080 you, always that person, that thing? And so you got that so dialed in now that the movie feels like you know the words, you know the way, and it makes it easier to get into that state.
Yes, absolutely that. I know the movie and I know the words. Yeah.
Okay. That's the first question. The second question that sometimes I worry about, because I do see this, and maybe this is just I think it's about understanding what you want the movie to look like, right? Because I do believe that everybody in the world, everybody I meet, there's no arbitrary people. To that person is the star of their own film, right? So they are the star. And we're all trying to create these better films. But I see a lot of other entrepreneurs, and they're only measuring their criteria on, say, that one thing. So because they've never mapped their enough in business, they see their personal growth is just keep on growing and adding more and more and more and more in business. And I worry about that. Like, how do you, because surely at some point, like I don't need a bigger house. Like, we love our home. It's amazing. That I've now reached the end of that. There's no amount of effort to buy a bigger house. Any amount of effort to buy a bigger house would be a waste of effort. So it has to be something else. How do you plot your enough into this thinking so that you don't just get too like down one line? How do you make it so multifaceted? Or does that just come with experience, with time? And think about, when you start doing it in the beginning, do you explore different paths? Like, what if I decide to become, Bryce Courtney was one of the world's leading ad guys, and then he became one of the world's best-selling authors when he retired. Like none of us are plotting those stories. Do you allow yourself to become different things?
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely, yes. So to go back onto your first question, do I know the steps and the music? Short answer, yes, but it can vary, and it does vary. The final avatar, which was the question about your final avatar is very basic avatar. It's me. I'm old. I'm with my wife. We're on rocking chairs at a lake house with doobies. Like I'm like 120 years old, like that's what we're doing. And I'm like, this is awesome. But all of the pieces to get there, the inner parts, that changes. Absolutely. The generic blocks. So the blocks that I'm going for, these are just goals that I have that I've written out in my, 6-month goals, 1-year goals, 5-year goals, like things that I want to accomplish as a man, as a human. Like these are things that I want. I want X amount of real estate. I want X amount of people that I'm serving in my business. I want to have amazing relationships with my friends and family. Like, I want to be healthier as I get older. I want to be more flexible this year than I was last year. And I want to make sure I go to X amount of yoga retreats with my wife. All of these sorts of goals. These are the things that remain the same because these are my goals and those won't change. Right now, how I get to the goal, right? I'm not worried about how. So the what's remain the same generally. The how, that can change any moment. And it does, right? I could have never told you last year I'd be on a podcast. That's for sure. 2 years ago, I could have never told you I'd be in like high ticket sales. I never even thought about that before. Now I do it full time, love it, and it's great. If you would have asked me 10 years ago about meditation and reading books, I'd be like, what are you talking about, man? Like, you don't have to concern yourself with the how, but the general stepping stones, my goals that I have, I know those. Now, could they change? Absolutely. I'm 100% flexible on those, but these are things that I am creating, that I'm working towards. Yeah.
So this notion of towards is something we push hard. One of the things that we help people with is victory condition design. So behind me, as you can see here, there's a whole bunch of board games. And if I wanted to teach you to play any game, the best games have multiple paths to victory. You might decide to go a military way, or you might decide to go a commerce, or you might, there's all different ways depending on the game you're playing. But they all have the same condition of victory. So your victory condition, if you understand your victory condition, your path to victory is actually almost unimportant and can change in a heartbeat because the situation changes. So our victory condition as a business is to be the world's leading authority in presentation. Like that's all we care about as a business. It's not about wealth and things. It's just about to be the world's leading authority. So this year happened and we were no longer able to run events the way that we traditionally ran them. But then when all we had to look for is, well, what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to be the world's leading authority in presentation. All of a sudden, we have access to more stages around the world than any other time before. So it was very easy for us to navigate. And I think what most people confuse is moving forwards with moving towards. And I think you should always be moving towards. Forwards is a misnomer. Forwards is a fake sense of progress, of letting momentum carry you from year to year to year. To me, your success should be measured against your intent, And that's what you do. So, and it's quite beautiful because you've got this vision in your head that allows you, so there's certain things, certain priorities that you have to keep in mind. You have to keep your health because you want to live to 120. You got to keep your sense of humor because you still want to be enjoying a good doobie. You've got to make sure that you're not a shitty husband because you want to keep your wife. So we've already got a couple of little criteria that are relatively important for you. You've got to keep some degree of finance going because you want to buy a lake house. But other than that, you've got freedom within the framework to move towards that in any number of ways. And then you're flexible to the approach. And sure, like you said, that could change. But for now, that is what you're heading towards. Most people haven't bothered defining their towards. Most people, they think success is being better at X, better at the main thing I do every day than I was last year. And I don't think that's good enough. Or having more money. And again, like if you've not defined your enough, you don't know when to stop. As a case in point, I did one of my challenges this year was to land 100 double unders in a jump rope. And I did it. And I was talking about this in a talk I was doing called Intention Seeker, like maybe a month ago. And this dude comes up to me after the talk and says, so what are you trying to do now? You're trying to do 200. I was like, no, what do I want to do 200 for? Like there's nothing more for me to gain in doing double unders. for longer. I don't want to be a double under champion. I just thought 100 was a number to make me feel like I've got those dialed in. If I can do 100, I'm off to good shape. So now I'm trying to do pull-ups, and I want to be able to do 3 muscle-ups. That's like the thing that I'm working towards now. There's no point. If you've not defined you're enough, though, where do you stop? Then you're this poor arsehole doing your 300th consecutive double under, and it just feels crappy because it's just the same. So I think people have to define what they want to move towards and know when to stop when they get there. Yeah. Otherwise, you move past it, right? You move past your own victory condition. What's the point of that? Stop and enjoy it.
Exactly, man. 100%. Couldn't agree more. And this is big shit, like thinking in these frames. People talk a lot about manifestation, law of attraction, all of these things. A lot of people bat their eyes at it and think it's woo woo. A lot of other people look at it and take it. And I really believe that the personal development space is badly broken. I really do. We don't need to get into it too deeply, but I think that there's too many of these guru-y people that are telling people that they need to fix themselves. Let's dig into your pain. Let's go to your trauma. Let's go find that space and work on it. Let's work on ourselves. You go to these self-help events, which I love, right? I love them. But you'll see the same people jumping up and down every year. And if you go talk to them, I say, have you created what you wanted since last year? Most of them will say no. And we'll say, well, why not? Like, what's stopping you from creating the life that you love? Why aren't you moving towards the thing you want to create? And they say, oh, because, I have imposter syndrome, or I have family entanglements, or I have, this deep rooted trauma. And, I've been working with my therapist on it, and we've been going deep into my family entanglements and things like this. And, I'm studying epigenetics, and I'm getting into trying to blah, 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 blah. And you're like, okay, so let me understand this correctly. You come here for a weekend and get pumped up, and then you spend the year trying to fix yourself, and then you come back and get pumped up. Am I right? Yes. And I said, do you think it would serve you better if you just said, I want to decide what I want to create? What is it you want to choose? What do you want to create? And I don't mean like a business. I mean, like, what's the feeling that you want? Joy, love, happiness, fulfillment. Like, what is the feeling that you want to create? And why can't you just feel that now? You can feel it right now. You don't need to go fix yourself. Is that landing? Are you feeling what I'm saying?
Completely and utterly. I totally buy that. But the problem is they're looking for the fix, and they're confusing excuses with reasons.
Exactly.
And this is problematic. And part of the problem with that is the gurus want them back. So they sell it like a drug. And it is a drug. You feel amazing. You come off a great talk. It's like a sugar rush. Yeah. But you're right. Like there's got to be some sort of almost criteria that you can't come back until you do certain things. Like you've got to have made progress.
Yeah. Progress towards creation. This is what I'm saying. This is the timeline. This is why it's so important. If you're focusing on the past and the problem and trying to fix it, your energy is there. You're expanding that, right? If you're focused on...
Have you read The Courage to be Disliked?
Pardon me?
The Courage to be Disliked.
Is that a book? No.
Yeah, it's very worth checking out. It talks about that as well. Basically, it's the kind of opposite to traditional Jungian, Freudian psychology. And he was a psychologist at the same time. And it basically says you can either be, you are defined by what happened to you. And he's like, well, no, like, don't see this as you're not a victim. You are, what if this was the thing that creates you out of it? And he takes a very different outlook on it, to the point that some people, it's quite a controversial book, but unnecessarily controversial. People say it victim shames and stuff. It doesn't at all. It just says that you're just not that. That's not you. It's not on, yes, sure, this thing happened to you, but it was just an event. Everything is now dependent on how you act from now. It's irrelevant. Like, you are who you are today. Your past is no longer part of you. And the only thing that matters is the future you want to create.
Exactly.
And like, there's just no point. There's no value, because you can't do anything about what's happened before you. So why give it one more second of your time if it was traumatic? And that works, by the way, is true for success as failure. So my first book was called Legacy, How Legacy Thinking is the Silent Killer of Innovation. And a lot of people are successful, and they're successful because of something they did yesterday. Therefore, they hold on to that and think I'll be successful by doing the same thing tomorrow, but you're not, right? So you have to define, by today's standards, by the problems I can solve that exist in the world today, how can I be successful going forward? So we have to be on a forward trajectory. Too much of this living in the past and looking at these things, and they give you excuses where they're not even valid reasons.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah. Exactly. That's just spot on. Exactly. What's the name of that book again? I want to write it down.
The Courage to Be Disliked. I will say, just one little caveat for anyone who wants to get it. I read it. I would probably suggest listening to it simply because it was a translation. It's Japanese guys writing about an Austrian psychologist translated back to English. And it's so, they use the word one, like more than the word the. So one must walk in one's shoes for one to see this. Only then shall one know oneness is old oneness. And you're like, what? Like, am I doing math or am I reading a book on psychology? And but I think it would have been easier, because I imagine if I could find a version read by, because a conversation, the whole book is a conversation with a young and an older Japanese person. And if I could have read it with that voice and that accent, if I had Mr. Miyagi reading it to me, then I'd be like, yeah, okay, I'm dialed in. I find it quite a difficult read, but a very important one. So
gotcha. That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love it. Anything that's, controversial in this realm of space, psychology and things, it's like the stock market, man. Do the opposite of what everyone says, right? Everyone's buying, you sell. Everyone's talking about fixing themselves, you go create. That's just how it is. Cool, man. All right, well, let's shift gears just a little bit here. The missing link, presentation powerhouse, man. Let's talk a little bit about presentations, right? In a nutshell, because this is something that I know that the audience, a lot of people who listen to the Growth Podcast are entrepreneurs, 99%, right? And I know for a lot of them, myself included, have dreams of creating a future where they are speaking on stage, whether that's selling on stage or motivating or both or neither, other things. I'm sure a lot of people are curious about the path one goes on to become a speaker. So enlighten us.
Okay. So the first thing is, if you're an entrepreneur, chances are you're already a speaker. In fact, you're probably already a professional speaker. Somebody's asked you to stand up and deliver a presentation or a pitch that you've been paid as a result of. So we've got to understand that is a state that exists in some way, means, or form, right? So we've got to get out of our own way. The second thing I need you to understand is that you can't afford not to, especially now. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but there are more stages in the world today. If you were doing business, I was doing business easily with South Africans in March this year. I'm doing business all over the world now. Our public speaking program has people from Australia to Alaska on it, because now we can, right? I believe that stage marketing is one of the most underutilized form of marketing for speakers. And the reason is because they get too obsessed with the idea about how do I get paid for my talk at the beginning, or I don't have something worth getting paid for. And neither of those is important. Because you can either get paid for your talk or you can get paid from your talk. And if you get paid from your talk, ideally you want to get both. You want to find a reason where you're charging a reasonable amount for your time and energy. And that's important because then people trust you. They know they're not just being sold to. But then you get money from your talk. So I built a 6-figure speaking business. I said to you, I traveled a lot last year. I was in 30 countries. I spoke in 26 countries last year on 6 continents. That was like a 6-figure speaking business. But actually, it was a 7-figure impact on my actual business, because I get off stage and people are like, dude, like, how can we engage? I would love to chat to you about this. How can we engage with you or your business? And that's what happens, because a stage is high authority marketing, and you should be embracing it. The question as to how do you do it, just decide to go, right? Is that like, you just got to put your hand up and say, I'm going to be the expert. I have something to say. Now, the one thing I do want to say is find an area in which you can be an authority. So if you're in marketing, right? And you can't just say, I want to do a talk on business marketing for small businesses. I'll throw a stone and hit somebody else who does that. You have to go further down the funnel until you find an area that nobody wants to own. That's what happened to me with presentations. When we started the business, we called Missing Link Interactive. We did all kinds of different things as well because I wasn't sure what the world needed. And then I realized everybody was ignoring presentations because it was the least sexy part of it. So I was like, yeah, sure, fuck it, why not? Let that be my space. So figure out the area that nobody has put their hand up and then sell the problem in that area like it's the most meaningful problem people have. Right? Like you've got to turn around and say, hey, shit, presentations, the biggest reason your business is failing to motivate, inspire its people, to drive sales, to, why you're not converting as much is because ultimately it comes back to you are unable to communicate your value to people. That is presentation. Communicating the value that's inside your head to other people to solve their problems. That is the equation of presentation. So you got to figure that out for yourself. And then there are hundreds of places. I could sales pitch us, and I would love to work with people, but there are 100 in your city right now, wherever you are in the world, there is somebody who will help you write a keynote talk, right? Like I would love you to engage with us, but you don't need us. You could really, or you can watch a YouTube video, or you could do it. It doesn't matter. Just put your hand up and speak. You don't need time. What you need is a deadline. Apply to speak at a TEDx talk near you, right? Just find somebody and get a gig. And when you have a gig, honestly, your give a shit tank will be full very quickly. That gas will fuel you through the rest of the bit. And then when you're on stage and you get off stage and you're like, holy, because you need to bring it, and you jump off stage and people are cheering for you and coming up to you and saying to you, dude, that was amazing. At that point, then you start to realize, wow, there's something to this. But if you're a business owner and you are not, or somebody in your business is not trying to lead with authority about what it is you do and the problem you solve in the world, I honestly feel like you are missing half of the trick. You are missing an opportunity because in every single industry, somebody is putting their hand up and saying, I'm the expert. If it's not you, why not? Decide to change that right now. On any industry, there are no boring topics. There are no boring industries, only boring people delivering boring presentations on that topic. And if that is your industry, cool, that's an opportunity for you to do better.
Yeah, totally, man. I love it. It's awesome. So I was just checking out your website earlier and I see it looks like you have like 3 steps, or I'm sure you have way more steps than this, but no, actually, sorry, you have many, many steps, but I just see here, develop, distribute, deliver. So are we talking about the develop sort of stage right now?
Yeah, so you have 3, you write a good talk before you design it, before you deliver it, right? So most people think like, I'll speak to people and they'll say, oh, we don't need you, I'm a very good speaker. It's not about being a good speaker. We've all seen good speakers who we don't remember, and we've all seen traditionally bad speakers who blow your mind. That's because the bad speaker wrote a good talk. Watch Elon Musk's launch of that battery that was stuck on his wall, that Tesla battery. That is objectively one of the single worst examples of presentation theoretically you've ever seen. The guy is a terrible presenter, except the fact that 100% of the people that I speak to want to buy the battery. And the reason for that is there are 4 steps to delivering a presentation. You give your audience a reason to care, then you give them a reason to believe, then you tell them what they need to know, and then you tell them what they need to do. Every presentation that is good and worthwhile has some degree of those. You buy their attention about a topic, like there's a dragon that needs to be slayed. Then you give them a little bit, just enough credibility on you as a person to make them think, okay, I now care about this dragon. You look like the right person to listen to help me slay it. You then give them the 3 steps they need to do in order to make that happen. And then you call them to action. This, by the way, is the most important step that everybody misses. They miss the end too. They don't bother making the audience care. They assume you care as much about your story as they do, or they care as much about your story as you do. But what's big in your world isn't big in their world. You have to make it big in their world. And then you don't call them to action. So you finish and you deliver the talk of your life and everybody loves it and everyone's cheering and they all come up to you after and say, you were amazing, you were hilarious. Do you know how many times at the beginning of my speaking period, people come up to me and say to me, dude, I remembered watching you. You were honestly one of my favorite speakers I've ever seen. I don't remember what you said to us, but I just remember loving it. And I was like, okay, well, this is shit. I spent so much in being funny and enjoyable that I forgot to be valuable. You have to perform and you have to inform. Anyway, but the main reason they don't remember what it was I did wasn't because I was bad at telling stories, is because I didn't make it important to them. I didn't call them to action. And you said this earlier about the 4 steps, and the easiest step is the first one. That's the mistake speakers make. They think I want you to go out there and start doing this quantum time jumping and timelining and all of these things. But actually, the first step I need you to do right now is just download Medito, which is a free meditation app. And all you're going to do is do a body scan once, for 15 minutes a day for 1 week. And once you've done that, I want you to listen to this podcast again. I want you to put an hour in your diary to listen to this podcast again. And then once you're ready, we're going to do it. Don't sell them on the big thing, because they're going to try it, they're going to fail, and they're going to forget it. Sell them on doing 1 15-minute body scan, something they can literally do immediately after this for free. And that's what I always say to speakers. You got to get your audience. You're not trying to get your audience to the victory condition. You're trying to get them to take the smallest possible step in the direction of that. Because now that is an action they're making towards a output that you want them to take, that they think matters to them. If you get them to take action as a result of you speaking, you've won. And if you're an entrepreneur, then that means towards the place in which they need you.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally, man. It's like I had a metaphor pop up in my head. I'm envisioning you're trying to call them to action to do something that's quite large, and it's like a massive long bridge, and it's like, hey, everybody jump on my super long massive bridge and walk on it to the end, and at the end there's something just amazing there for you. Or it's like, hey, everyone, I have this really small, like 4 foot long bridge here. It's got some flowers and it's a pretty nice bridge. It's safe and everything's cool. If you guys just want to take a couple steps on it and just to jump over on the other side, there's something there that's kind of cool. You want to? And then they hop over the little bridge. When they get there, they're like, actually, that was pretty cool. That was a nice bridge. And you're like, yeah, actually, well, I have this other bridge over here. It's slightly longer, but man, that thing at the end of the bridge this time, it's a little bit bigger. Right. And then by the end, then 4 or 5 bridges later, they've reached that damn destination, but there's no way they were getting on that first big bridge. It wasn't happening. Right.
Totally. That there's one of those journeys that by the time you finish, you realize, wait, am I done? Yeah. I didn't even think that was nearly as bad. That's what you want to get people to do. Exactly. But people try sell the big vision. They try and sell you the end goal. Go out there and sign up for that big race. No, man, just go out for one small quick jog tomorrow morning. Go for a walk. That's where you start. And most speakers fail to do that. So you've got those 3 facets. So first of all, you have to understand you got to structure a good talk. You got to write a good talk. Then only do you worry about making your slides. Don't open a talk doesn't start in PowerPoint. It starts in Trello or in Post-it notes. Like we've created a framework. I'll post it here for you in the chat. We've created a framework. It's a free Trello board that people can go to. Trello. That I don't know.
I just opened the chat.
Sorry.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, fuck, man. Sorry. I don't know why I'm unable to type here. Okay, that link that I'm about to send you /Trello. I don't know what's going on there, but the most important thing is that you structure your talk well, and then you can start making your slides, and then you can worry about your delivery. But it's actually the least important part of being a good speaker. And the only way to get good at it is to speak more. So go do your first gig and don't worry about it.
Boom. Love it. All right, man. Well, it's a pleasure having you on here, man. You're a ball of fire. You're in the fire, and I can see it in your eyes, brother. Yes, I love it. It's been a pleasure, man. Thanks so much for coming on. If the guys want to come find you real quick, where can they go and check you out?
2 places. One, they can go to so I love Missing Link. I need missinglink.com. That's the company site. So I need missinglink.com, and you'll find everything. You'll find a link to a speaker mentorship program, to all of our training, all of our materials and everything there. So that'd be amazing. If you want to connect with me personally, if you go to getrich.af, then you'll be able to find me there, and you'll be able to connect with me there. And if you want to, because I'm now cutting into dinner and everybody's waiting for me, if you do want to go and give my wife a thumbs up on her art on Instagram, go check out jasminejagger.com, and then I've won back brownie points for not being late for dinner. But that would be amazing. So those 3 are ways to stay connected in any way means, and I would love to engage, and let me know if you do connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram. Please let me know that you met by Aaron, and it would be amazing, and share your story about growth with me.
Yeah, love it, man. Cool, Rich, man. It's been a pleasure having you on the Growth Podcast, man. I appreciate your time.
All right, dude. Looking forward to chatting again.
As do I. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. By the way, you know, there's some people who want to build an online business, but sometimes are scared of scams or who to trust, or they begin and they just get lost in the daily task with no blueprint to follow, right? And because of that, they never get started and just end up staying in the same position year after year because time flies, you know? So if you're thinking to yourself, there must be a way to create a predictable, stable income online, but you don't know where to start, I've got something you might enjoy. Head over to www.bjkugrowth.com. Watch a quick interview I had with my buddy. He's an 8-figure earner. His name is Bashar, and he gets into, you know, how he grew into a successful online entrepreneur and how he now is helping thousands of others do the same. You're gonna love it. You know, I've seen so many lives changed just learning this valuable information from him. So it might just be what you're looking for. You know, so go over to www.bjkugrowth.com. I'll see you there. And thanks again for tuning in and supporting the Growth Podcast.